Ladies, gentlemen, thank you for tuning in into the new video about the C# basics in Unity 2019. And the reason why I'm doing this is again, because a lot of things have changed over time, and I just want to be up to date with the C# basics. We're going to do this again in Unity, right? So this is my amazing Unity scene. It's just a terrain. In this case, I've imported the first-person controller from the Unity Asset Store. And I can just walk around and do nothing. Well, walk around and jump, right? That's it. Because this is all we need for the video, because we're going to do the basics of C#. There will be a second video soon, and that will be about gameplay, and I'm going to go a little bit more into detail, for example, how to create a dialogue, how to pick up a key, how to open a door with a key, etc, etc. So for now, we're going to do the basics. So I've created a folder called scripts, and in there I created a C# file called variables. In this case, you can go here, create a C# script. A couple of things are important straight away. This is a script. This one here, right, the public class variables, this name has to match the name of the actual file, otherwise it will not work. So this name has to match this one over here. Then you have this part over here. This means extends mono behavior. In this case, well, if you're just getting started with C# in Unity, you don't care about this, just leave it. If you want to get a little bit more into detail, I will make a new video about this, but for now, just leave it as it is, right? Then you have the start function and the update function. Start is called when the game starts, well, before the first frame update. So the first frame will run, and then the second frame it will actually execute this one over here, and this is on every single frame. What that means that it's frame rate dependent. So if you have 400 FPS, this will execute 400 times. If you have 4 FPS, this will execute only 4 times, right? So this is important that you know the difference. This is on every frame, and it's frame rate dependent. Okay, so let's start up top here, and we're going to make some basic variables over here. First thing though, it's a difference between a public variable and a private variable over here. So, not like that, private. So I'm going to make two of them. So I'm going to make a public, I'm going to call this a string, which is this text. I'm going to call this my text, and I add a semicolon over here. And I'm going to do a public string second text. Now what I'm doing here as well, this is called a camel casing, right? You start the first with a lower letter, and then the second word you start with a capital. This is called camel casing. So Unity is going to compile over here. We shouldn't get any errors, and if you can check it over here, nothing happens, so it's good. Right now though, this script is not in the game yet, right? It doesn't exist, it just exists here in our project folder, and that's it. So I'm going to drag it on my player over here. I'm just going to like fold this in a little bit, and I'm just going to drag it on there. There you go. So now we get actually one slot here. That's the my text variable. So that's this one over here. That's the public one. And the private one is not visible, right? So you can actually check it though if you want to. You can go to here up to and then debug. You'll see here, right, the second text is actually blurred out, so you can't edit it, right? Since it's private, so it cannot be accessed by anything outside the actual file over here. So if I fill it in, for example, here, I'm going to add like text, beautiful text. So this can only be edited from the class itself, right? Nothing else can actually access this. And let's compile this again. We're gonna again go here, debug, and hope we get an error here. It's not actually an error. This is just a warning, like, hey, there's a file, or there is a variable. Second text is the sign, but it's never used. But you can ignore it for now. So it can only be accessed from this actual class, right? There's a second thing that you need to know if you're doing a private. If you want to do proper like naming conventions. Private variables always start with an underscore. In this case, you get private string second text underscore second text. And my text here is without a underscore because it's a public variable. So you also have, I'm going to go here as well, I'm going to create a private integer. So that's an int, and you can call it my number. You also have a private boolean, which is true or false. Let's call this my bool. What else do we have? My private float, which is pi, so I'm going to call this pi. It's 3.14f. You need to add an f there, so it actually is a float. And again, since it's a private variable, I'm going to add an underscore here just to be good. So this is here. What else do we need? Well, this is pretty much all that you need, but you can also have a game object. I'm going to make a public game object over here for a second. So game object. I'm going to call it my game object. And then we get the basic ones, right? So I'm going to do that list. I'm going to let it compile again, and then we should see. Go set this one back to normal. We now have a text slot here. that we can add in, and then we have a game object installed over here. So for example, I can now drag in my light, right? So I can drag in my light over here from my hierarchy, drag it in there, and then you get your script. So what can you do with this right now? Well, pretty much nothing. But what I can do here, for example, I'm gonna go here into my string, second text. I'm gonna declare text here. Oh. We could probably just debug it here, right? So in my start function, I'm gonna hit debug.log, and then I want to print out my second text over here. So this is gonna call once, and that's it, right? So I'm gonna hit play now. I'm gonna hit compile. I'm gonna hit play, and then we get bottom left here. We get text, right? So actually in the console we get text. Beautiful. I'm gonna actually turn this off for a second. There you go. So we get text, right? That's the text that we actually declared here. Okay, what we can also do is also print out my text as well. So I'm going to do the same thing here. Actually, I'm going to do it in the same print function. So up here, I'm going to say my text. I'm going to do a plus so we can add a second variable. I'm going to add a string here so we can actually have a little bit more ordered. So we get public text and a second text, right? So the public text, we actually filled it in here. So we should see this text here followed by a dash and then text. There you go. I can also, of course, change this text as well if I want to do something else right now, like sub. Now hit play again, you can actually see that it should change to sub. There you go. Okay. Well, what happens, right, if you actually put this in our update over here? I'm going to show you. I'm going to make sure I don't collapse this. I'm going to play again, and you should see every single frame there is going to be a text being spawned. As you can see, right, it actually piles up. So in this case, it's 75 times per second. We get this called in here. That's why you have to be a little bit careful, especially when the update function, that you actually only do things that should be updated every single frame. If not, don't, right? Okay. So, what if, right? I've actually used my light in here, so I'm going to add here my light. What if I want to access the color, for example? So I want to change the color here to something else, like, I don't know, pink or whatever. We actually need to do a little bit different here, since it's a game object, right? We need to access the actual component. So I'm going to make a pretty picture here real fast. So a game object is, well, you have to view it as a hierarchy, right? So we start up top here with the game object. I'm going to write beautiful handwriting over here. Under the game object, there's are the actual components, right? Component, you can fill in the blanks. And then you can actually access the actual variables that you want to have, right? So in this case, this is a light. I'm going to go back to my light over here, and then we see the component is called light. So I need to access that component. Then, only then can I actually change, for example, the color over here. So what I can do in my start function here, I'm going to say my game object dot get component. Then I want to access the light component, right? And then we have to do like this. And then we can change the color, for example. The color over here, let's say equals color dot, I don't know, let's do blue, right? Like this, color blue. So we get the component, we say, okay, I want to access the light component, and then I want to change the color which can be found in my light component over here. Let's hit play, and it turns blue. Perfect, right? Of course, you can also change it to something else. You can also make a new color if you want to, right? So you can also say, okay, I want to make a new color, like this. I think I say 0, let's do 1, 0.5, and 1, right? That's the alpha. So RGB alpha, and then I don't know what I'm going to get, but it's probably really weird. I'm going to hit play. And there you go. It's like greenish. Of course, you also do something else, right? In this case, I can also do that in the update, which would be really interesting. I'm going to paste this over here. So in the update function, like this. And then I can also, of course, change get a random value that I can get from over here as well. So what I can do here, I'm going to delete them real fast. So I can do a random.range, for example, from 0f, so it's float, to 1f, and do that 3 times, right? So I'm going to paste this real fast. And then 1 for the alpha again. So the red color is random, the blue color is random, and the green color is random. I'm going to update every single frame, so that should be hilarious. Those who have epilepsy, you might want to look away. Well, here we go. Random colors every single frame. I have no idea why would you do that, but you can, right? So let's not do that. Let's actually put this back in the start function. And you can also do the same thing here, for example, as well with the actual intensity, right? But what I did here, right, is super inefficient, right? So we actually get the game object, then we get the component, and then we actually change the attribute that we want to change. We also change this into the actual component that we need, right? So I can say here public light, and then my light, for example, like this. Then we only have to do is like my light dot color. Then we can do the same thing here. I'm going to just keep it a white dot color, right? Oh, I should get an error now. Oh, cannot be used as now. Is oops. Is new color 1111. Oh, there you go. Okay. Now I look here in my game object, my player. I'm gonna let it compile here for a second, and then we should see now I have a light slot. Then I can drag in my light, right? Only things that have a light component can be dragged in there. So my terrain, I can't drag it in there, right? As you can see, I cannot add it in here. So it's a little bit more safer when you do it like this. So I'm gonna keep this one back here. So I'm gonna show you something. So there you go. Okay, so I'm gonna leave it here, and then we should get the game object back again as well. So I'm gonna add my terrain in my game object over here. Then I'm gonna turn this one back on, and you should see an error, right? You'll see that it will throw us an error. Just hit play. Then we get a big fat red error, right? That's perfect. So what it's trying to do here, it's trying to access the light component of my terrain, but my terrain does not have a light component, right? So it's like I don't know what to do. So this is a null exception, a null reference or missing component exception. You want to be careful with that. You can do it like this as well. I'm gonna hope. Oh, you can't do that anymore. Okay. So by actually stating the actual component that you need is a little bit more safe, because this leaves a little bit less room for error. In this case, when I get rid of this again, just a little bit safer. So it's up to you what you want to use, of course, but I think it's a little bit more efficient to actually call the component that you need instead of the game object. But of course, it's up to you. So intensity, I'm going to do intensity here, equals random.range again. Let's do 0f to 1f again to say it's a float. So f means a float. I'm not going to hit play here. There you go. Get a nice disco effect where every single frame we get a random intensity value. I want to be careful with this though, but yeah, okay. So that's pretty easy, right? There are a couple more functions. There's also a void fixed update that you can use as well. This is execute every 0.02 seconds, which is a little bit more safer, especially for like physics. You want to use the fixed update and animations as well. And this is a little bit more stable, right? So every 0.02 seconds you get an actual update on, in this case, of the light intensity, but you don't have to use it, right? So again, void every frame, dependent on the frame rate, fixed update. It will run at a certain set of intervals, in this case 0.02. So okay, up to you, right? So okay, so what can we do with this right now? Absolutely nothing. It does nothing at all. It's really boring, so nothing's happening here. What we can do, for example, here is we're going to create an object, a game object here. I'm going to create a sphere. I'm going to put it somewhere in the actual scene, a little bit lower. There we go. Beautiful, right? Beautiful. So what I want to do, right, is when I enter this sphere, I'm going to hit it, oof, that the light turns off, right? So when the light turns off. But first thing first though, we need to make sure that we actually can use this. So right now this is set to a collider object, so I can only hit it. When I turn it into a trigger, I'll show you the difference, right? So right now it's collider. I can walk to it and I can't go actually through it. But if I turn it into a is trigger over here, you'll see that I can actually walk through this. Okay. So this is now a trigger object, which is fine, right? Okay. So I'm gonna make a new script here. So my script folder here, I'm gonna make a new script. Let's call this sphere trigger. Gonna open the file, double click it. So okay, it's same thing as one before, right? In this case though, we actually don't need the void and we don't need to start an update function. I'm just gonna delete them. Only thing I want to use here is the void on trigger enter, like this. Which is when something actually enters the trigger, then you can do something, right? So I'm just gonna hit debug.log. I'm going to say triggered. Again, though, it's not in the game yet, so I need to actually drag it on an object. In this case, it's on a sphere trigger. I'm just going to drag it on there. Going to hit play. Going to walk through it, and we should see bottom left again. We get the text triggered, right? This one up here. So this is done only when you enter the trigger. There's also an void on trigger stay and a void on trigger exit, right? So this is when you are inside the trigger, this is when you exit the trigger. So enter, stay, and exit. So I can do this right now. Well, in this case, right, everything can actually trigger the trigger, but I want to avoid that. I only want the player to be able to trigger the trigger, right? So we need to actually check to see, hey, okay, is the object that hit us, is it the player? If not, do nothing, and if it's the player, then do something with it, right? So I'm gonna do I play it right now as a tag. I'm gonna give it a tag over here, so I'm gonna give it a player tag, so up here, tags of the player, and then we can actually compare it, right? So you can actually do it multiple ways. You can say, okay, if other dot name equals, in this case it's called, I think, the SPS controller, then do something, right? So if if the name of the object that hit us is called FPS controller, then do something. I'm gonna copy paste real fast. I'm gonna say here debug log player. Let's actually check it out. I'm gonna open the console here real fast for you guys. There you go. Let's check it out. That works fine, right? Yeah, cool, it works. But what if I change my name to the actual player, right? So what if I change the name of my game object to player? Oh, nothing's happening, right? So we don't get an actual message here in the console saying that, hey, the player has entered the trigger, because we're checking the name, right? Which is usually a bad idea, so you want to avoid it, because what if the name changes, right? This is scary. Usually you don't do that, right? So what we can do though is we can actually check the tag that we just gave the player here. So I can say compare tag. Let's call this player. So compare tag. Beautiful debugging here I know. So if the tag of the object that hit us equals to the player of one over here, do something, right? So I'm gonna hit play again. We get a message. I can change the name now of my object as well, so I'm gonna call this I don't know, like this. It still triggers, right? So that's the advantage of this. You can actually, it doesn't matter what you call it, it just looks at the actual tag player, right? Okay, so next step could be that we actually we create a slot in our the sphere trigger, so we can actually turn off the lights from our trigger, but I want to do it from the player, right? In this case, the player is called variables. I'm just gonna leave it like this. I'm gonna need all of this because I don't need it anymore. Same here. Actually, I'm gonna leave this one over here, and then we're gonna leave this as well. There you go. Okay. So right now we only have a public myLight and a start and update function in my variable script, which is on the player. Right? It's here. So we have light in here as well. So what I kind of want to do though is when I enter the trigger here, I want to call a certain function in the player that will turn off the light, right? That's it. That's what I want to do in this case. So if the other is the player, we kind of want to say here that other than the dots, and then we say get component variables, and then we have like a function name like turn off light, which doesn't exist. We need to make it first, right? So I'm gonna comment this out real fast. So in here I need to make a function. Let's call this turn off light, and in there we set the intensity of the light. So myLight, oh, not like that, myLight dot intensity equals 0, nothing, right? Cool. So now when I go back to here, I want to call that function, right? Then when I look for it, it doesn't exist, right? So if I could turn it, I could type here all I want, it doesn't exist. Which actually makes sense because this function over here right now, this void here is private, right? So only this class can actually access that function. So I need to make this into a public function, a public void. Now when I go back here, I can actually now call my function from the other file. So this is basic OOP, object oriented programming. Ish, not exactly, but you get the idea. There we go. And our lights turned off. Okay. So when I exit it now, I actually want to turn it on again. So again, same here. So if other dot compare tag player. So if it is the player, then other dot get component. In this case, variables. Then I want to make a function that actually turns on the light, or we can do a little bit sexier. I mean, why would you make two functions to do the same thing, right? It's just a different value. So what I can here, I could call this like turn light, for example. And in that function, I'm going to pass a variable. I want to pass on a boolean that's true or false. In this case, let's say off or on, whatever. Doesn't really matter, right? So now we get an error here over here as well. So like, he doesn't exist anymore. I'm going to turn on here, so turn off. In this case, turn light, and I'm going to pass through a false, right? So false, I'm going to turn off. And over here, when I say true, I want to turn it on again. So turn light, and then true. So we can now pass on the variables. In this case, we can say, okay, if off, right? If the boolean is false, I want to set this to 0. If not, we want to say my light.intensity equals 1. To add here as well. So if the boolean is false, that's why I call it off, right? So that's actually why is naming important. If I call this now on, right, then it doesn't make sense anymore, right? So I have to change this to on here as well. So if my boolean on is true, then we turn the light off, right? That doesn't make sense. So you have to make sure that the naming actually makes sense of the booleans, of the variables in general. They need to make sense, right? So when I exit it, I want to set the value here to true, and then it should turn on the light. So I'm gonna hit play here. I'm gonna walk in here. It's turned off. It should actually be turned off. There you go. I think I actually fucked it up right now. This should be true and this should be false. Sorry. See, I did it myself now as well. Sorry. So off, and exit it, back on. There you go. Really basic. Of course, you can do things here as well. You can also say here, okay, I'm gonna do one more thing. So I want to create a function here that just makes a light flicker, right? So I'm gonna make a void light flicker like this, and I want this actually to make the light flicker. That's why it's called light flicker. Random.range 0f to 1f. And I kind of want to do this every single frame, right? So I want to have it like flickering hardcore. But I can actually put this function in my update, right? But that will mean it will just always work. It will always just flicker. I can do it like this. It's fine, right? But it's going to do it from start. I can turn this into a public as well. That's also fine. And I can call it from the other file. That's no problem at all. So when I'm in here, I can say, or if, again, let's make sure that it's actually the player that actually is doing anything. I can say here, get component, again, variables. Let's say light flicker. Oh, sorry. Like this, right? So I'm gonna do it like this. And it should actually work fine. So while we're in the scene, it works fine. When I exit again, it's just done, right? So it works because this like is a loop, right? So this is always running while we are inside the trigger itself, right? So what would actually happen if I set it to here? So I'm gonna put this part over here. When we exit this, this is all good. Then we turn it off, and then it just flickers once, and nothing happens, right? Because this only gets called once. When we exit the trigger, it's gonna get called, and that's it. So what we actually, if I want to make this flicker a lot, we need to do this a little bit differently, right? So I'm going to set this back to a, so like this. So in this case, I want to set a boolean to true, and if that boolean is true, then I want to light the flicker. So I'm going to make a private bool this case is light flicker. I'm set it to false, like this. Again, since it's private, I'm going to add an underscore here. Is light flicker is false in this case. Then in here, I can say, for example, that if is light flicker is actually true in here, like this. Some people also write it like this, which is also valid, but it's super inefficient. So like this, if light flicker, then I'm gonna paste this value over here. There you go. Okay. Right now, if this boolean over here is set to true, we have light flickering. If we don't, nothing's gonna happen, right? So I can now play it though, but nothing's gonna happen. So we actually need to make sure that we do something here. Right now, I get a big fat error over here because it's set to private. So in here though, I want to set the boolean to, in this case, true. So I want to say here, if this function is called, I want to set it to true. You can also do it a little bit differently. You can also set here, is light is like this. Same thing, but in this case, it just flips the value of the actual boolean. So if it's true, it's going to make it false. If it's false, it's going to make it true. Doesn't really matter that much though, but you could. So is light flicker is true. So when this function is called, this should get executed, right? In this case, I'm going to leave it here. There you go. Let's hit play real fast. And then we get light flicker. Now again, it'll keep on flickering, right? Which makes sense because we never set the boolean here back to false ever again, right? So we need to do, if you want to do that, you have to create something here that will actually set the boolean back to false, which is also fine, right? I can also just do it like this again. So I'm gonna do it like this now. So it's gonna flip it again. So the first time when we exit the boolean, it should set it to true. The second time it should set it to false, and so weiter. Flickers, false, flickers again. So this is just flipping the actual boolean from the to the opposite side, pretty much. So that's pretty much it for now. At least this is the uber basics of C#. Next video will be a little bit more in detail, a little bit more about gameplay. So I'm going to go to a little bit more complex code. But for now, this is a good start for those who are new to C# and for those who are known to this. Soon, okay, soon. So I'll see you guys soon next time.